I think the difficulty with patent monetization is actually getting other people to pay you good value for your inventions that you've patented. And the main means by which companies have been monetizing patents has been through litigation. And so, as we've seen in the US with the Apple and Samsung battles, as well as with the patent assertion entity NPE litigation in the US, that's really been, the main means by which companies have been able to extract value by litigating and then settling their cases and getting large settlements. And so typically that has been a much more successful way. Monetizing patents in terms of licensing revenue without litigation has been much more difficult because companies are less incentivized to pay unless it's through patent standards or other types of patent pools. So I think, on the patent side, that's what we've seen. But in terms of trends, what we've seen in the US has been perhaps a cooling off of the litigation, the hot litigation, and also the valuations of patents has been coming down because the damages that have been awarded have been lower. So I think there's some uncertainty in terms of how much value you can extract using litigation, and also there's a general perception from the government and consumers that companies are just using patents to almost bully and intimidate small companies into paying up. So because of that, I think the patent, the industry is going through a bit of a challenge. In Europe, on the other hand, we're actually just seeing more litigation. In general, you don't get such large damages awards, but we're beginning to see more patent litigation in Europe and in China as well. So perhaps Europe and China are sort of following the trend in the US, and that is probably going to be the way in which patents are monetized there. In terms of know-how, I think that is far more challenging because in the first place, know-how is such an amorphous concept. Many people find it hard to define what is know-how, let alone be able to work out how they're going to monetize it. And so what we've seen typically is licenses where companies say, you can take this technology and I'll also license you the know-how as an add-on, right? And then you take a license for the whole bundle. So it's usually the copyright, the patents, and the know-how all together. And so you can't really quantify how much of that is really know-how monetization, and so what is the value of your know-how. So it's always been something of a, I suppose, second cousin to patents, but it is quite important in some industries. So we're talking about in the retail sector, in the services sector, food, in pharmaceuticals, in these areas where, for example, even after the patent has expired, the know-how on how to manufacture cost-effectively can actually be a real competitive advantage. So in these industries, they have been able to monetize their know-how by licensing that know-how. Outside of that, though, I would say it's quite difficult, mainly because of the valuation and also the trying to define what it is. So I think the scene in ASEAN is that we're at a much earlier stage. So most of the companies in this area are really still at the point of acquiring intellectual property, protecting their rights, and the number of patents filed is growing. And so that's going very well. But I think there are less companies that actually are able to then translate that patent portfolio into monetization, and that is really where the challenge is. In other words, companies need to have a clear strategy on how they're going to monetize those patents. So they have to be willing to litigate in order to get settlements. They have to be willing to license technology that they may not need So there is a culture, I think, in many companies in ASEAN to just file patents and keep it to themselves rather than monetizing the patents that perhaps they don't need or sharing them. So I think it is partly cultural and partly sort of gaining greater understanding of the system. And I think I expect that that is something that's beginning to happen. Certainly in Singapore, we're seeing a lot more in that area, and I expect that the other ASEAN countries will slowly follow suit. So we are probably about 5-10 years behind, but I don't think it will take us 5-10 years to catch up. We're going to catch up soon.